that I have been associated with this event in which we would be having some interaction between myself and Professor Sen, who is not only one of the outstanding thinkers of our time, but also my teacher. Virtually all of the welfare economics I know, and much of the economics I have learned from him. So of course he should not be blamed for my stupidities. But it is not only in terms of learning, but he had an enormous impact on us. He and another great teacher of mine, who was economist, to go in for an academic life, because we thought if Amartya Sen and Shukumai Chakravarti find this life interesting, then we must also aspire to such a life. This is a book which of course is written with his usual elegance as well as lucidity. It's beautifully written. It is an exploration at the deepest level of at least three areas. One is welfare economics, the other is moral and political philosophy, and of course mathematics and logic. If you think of people in the world who would be talking about these three areas at the depth at which this book is discussing them, then the set of such people would probably have only one element, and that is Professor Sen. So nobody, certainly not me, is in a position competent enough to really say very much on this book. I imagine, because when this book was written, the original, this is an expanded version of a book originally written in 1970, and the 1970 book was really a reflection of the research that Professor Sen was carrying out at that time, and he was doing so when I was an MA student. His first major article in this area was in Econometrica 1966, a possibility theorem on majority decisions. In fact, that's a paper which he used to teach to us in an advanced economic theory course, which was an optional course that I opted for in Delhi School of Economics. The fact that Professor Sen asked me to be with him on this occasion is really a touching faith he has in my ability after 50 years to remember the kind of things that he had taught us at that time. I would proceed as follows. I would request Professor Sen to speak on the book for some time. Then I would raise a few issues with him, which after reading the book have struck me. I would like to get his responses and reactions to those issues, and then we will have an open discussion which would be thrown open to everybody. Hopefully we shall be ending at 8:30. Thank you. With that, I would request Professor Sen to say a few things on the book.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy and delighted and honored that Prabhat agreed to speak. I thought that I will put a discipline on me by trying to write up something so that I don't go very much over 15 to 20 minutes, because I think it should be about 16 minutes. But I have a question. It is about overhead writing. This is just mesmerizing me. And I think if you suddenly see me collapsing, it would be the effect of illumination on nervous system. But overhead lighting is not a food dog here, is that right? Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I need one of those. My teacher here in Dhaka used to have one of those glasses. Yeah. That could be, yeah. We would not want to turn our back on the audience. Yeah. Thank you. Right. So I call this social choice theory then and now. In making social decisions for a group, such as a nation, a community, a committee, or any other collectivity, the diverse views and interests of different members of the group must receive attention and importance. This can be an exacting task, since people's views can differ, and as Horace had pointed out a long time ago, there may be, I quote from Horace, as many preferences as there are people. And there are also difficult issues, take another kind of aggregation problem, even in describing what exactly is happening to a group as a whole. Is it better off or worse? Are they happier? Do they have more freedom than before? Is there more poverty or less than in the past? Has social inequality in the group diminished or increased? Can the social decisions to emerge be seen as democratic, or are they in some important sense authoritarian? Methods of aggregative assessment are central subjects of social choice in general and welfare economics. That's the subject of making judgments about how the welfare of the society is going in particular. There have been speculations on social aggregation throughout human history. Going back, for example, to Causilia and Aristotle in the 4th century before Christ. However, social choice theory as a formal discipline first came into its own around the time of the French Revolution. The subject was pioneered, in fact, by French mathematicians in the late 18th century, particularly Condorcet and Bolzan. They addressed social choice problems in a lot of mathematical terms and initiated the intellectual discipline of social choice theory in terms of voting and related procedures. The intellectual climate of the period was greatly influenced by European Enlightenment, with its interest in reasoned construction of a social order. And the spirit of the French Revolution greatly influenced the origin of formal social choice theory. Indeed, some of the early social choice theories, most notably Condorcet, were also among the theorists and the intellectual leader of the French Revolution. They wanted a systematic discipline to guide the post-revolution France, but Condorcet identified some major difficulties in doing it. He identified the so-called voting paradox, whereby in majority voting it could be the case that X defeats Y defeats Z, but Z in turn defeats X, so that there is no undefeated alternative at all. These investigations have been carried on over more than 200 years. The revival of this 18th century initiative, by the way, a lot of people wrote on that, including someone who's worked with Mr. Million, who was written here, but not as a social choice theory, named Louis Carroll, under his name, real name, C.L. Dobson. But the revival, in a very systematically developed form, came from the work of Kenneth Arrow in 1950 in an article 51 in the book. Professor referred to my very dear friend and great influence on my life, Superman Chakravarti. Superman first drew my attention. Yeah, that's just borrowed it from the bookshop in college. Shop there, who said Superman to borrow books, provided we didn't store it. He put newspaper around the company. Because of the newspaper form, Superman waved at it, at me and that. It could have been February 52. The book had come out in September 1. And he said this book was interesting very much. Absolutely right. I got completely hooked on it. Arrow's famous impossibility theory, which was in fact in his PhD dissertation, extended Condorcet's result of paradox of voting and showed that all procedures going from individual preferences to social choice, satisfying some reasonable and very mild conditions of regularity, would suffer from serious defeat. Many people took that to be a kind of anti-democratic theory, showing that democracy is not possible. It didn't actually work there. The first edition of this book, Collective Social Welfare, published more than 4.5 decades ago, 1970, was based mainly on my lectures, notes at the Delhi School of Economics and 16, which Prabhat has attended. I was privileged to a brilliant student at the Delhi School of one person here. And my work was deeply influenced by my interactions with them. Some of them were more formal, some of them were more concerned with the implication. Prabhat was much more concerned with the implication. The namesake of his was Prabhat Patnaik. I knew Patnaik. I think Patnaik was senior. He was doing PhD, he was doing MA, and he was very involved in the mathematics of social story. But that was great. I've been lucky throughout my life. But I think that's what school. So I was deeply influenced by these interactions for questions of my education and also what problem of that made. Now, on the positive and constructive side, the book shows ways of getting out of errors in possibility problem. One of the papers to which Prabhat referred was restricted that individual preferences may not be of every possible kind. And the paper you referred was what kind of preferences there would be no problem at all. It has to be very peculiar and pathological for a problem to occur. But the more general solution comes from broadening the informational base of social choice, mainly through what economists call interpersonal comparison of welfare. This means I could compare your welfare with mine, saying your unhappiness with yours, you are more wealthy than I am. Or if you say something different, I have more freedom than you have. So this kind of comparison was ruled out for some reason in economics, and in both things you don't have that. And the impossibility theory is making that limitation. These additional information about interpersonal comparison are not only useful to remove paradox entirely, but also for making fairer and more illuminating judgments, including information on people's poverty, their deprivation of various types, their miseries, their happiness, and other things. In fact, even if there had been no impossibility here, it would be amazing if you could make social judgment without being able to compare anyone's well-being with another. I mean, the whole world would go away of real problems. People can't say they're terrible poor people suffering while others are rolling in suffering. You have to make mistakes. That's not only to avoid the problem of paradox, which it does, but also just serious the judgment. These seem to tie up to social theory with the social ethics of the kind on which Adam Smith, Mary Wollstonecraft, the pioneering feminist, and in my judgment probably the most underestimated writer of the peak of enlightenment. Karl Marx and John Stuart Mill in the 19th century, and others had already written, and so on. In fact, conversation. Kenneth Arrow didn't take very much on the side, but conversation had. I saw what I was doing at that time, not only in getting out of paradoxes, which is main reason why my papers were read, but that was what I thought I was doing. But one of integrating the specialized mathematical discipline of social choice theory with the general and broad literature on political philosophy. This broadening also included finding a place for human rights, pioneered by Tom Paine and Mary Wollstonecraft, whom I just referred, and well captured by the United Nations General Pronouncement in 1948 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This was just about 4 years before I was getting involved in the subject. On the cautionary side,
साउंड सिस्टम सबसे खराब है.
On the cautionary side, however, the book investigated how some of the well-accepted principles of welfare economics, including the widely used Pareto principle, if everybody agrees X is better than Y, then X is better than Y, would have to be compromised, in fact dropped, to accommodate human rights substantially. That's a rather complicated result because it happens over one fair while you're asserting human rights over another fair. But it's a problem of the world. I personally saw no great difficulty in such a radical redirection, and I thought many of the axioms of welfare economics were not good anyway. So predictably, many well-established economic theorists were extremely unhappy with the implications of the results I was presenting, and I did face a fair amount of resistance in the form of at least 100 or so papers. Actually attack is quite important. I will go on to political things, and I know that tomorrow morning, when I open the social media, I will get 200 or 300 attacks. And if I get anything less than 300, I feel depressed. It indicates I'm being neglected. And they're all usually of 4 or 5 different kinds, indicating what kind of, I won't use the word, it's a 5-letter word, actually it's 4-letter word, what kind of a thing I am, and so on. And they repeat. You can say this is A, this is type C, this is type E. So there's a way well organized arrangement there. The decade following 1970, in fact, saw a huge burst of interest in social choice theory. I think well over 2,000 articles and books appeared on the subject. The need for taking things forward and to re-examine what had been done in 1970 was becoming stronger as the years passed. And the extended edition is partly a result of my attempt to catch up, taking note of the vast literature over the decades. I also had to work on and derive some new mathematical results to complete the story. And that came out actually mostly econometric. I think I published maybe about 12 or 15 papers on that. And that continued in that period. There is not much point in today concentrating on these mathematical exercises in this meeting, and I will not. But it was not all mathematics. If Arrow's focus in the 20th century revival of social choice theory has been on the mathematical discipline of aggregation, there has been the need to find more room for Condorcet's original 18th century focus on public discussion to identify what reasons tend to emphasize. The extended edition of the book makes much greater use of Condorcet's involvement with and John Stuart Mill's concentration on the idea that democracy has to be seen as, I quote, government by discussion. Not a quote from Mill, by the way. It's Badger who did the phrase, but following Mill, as he explained. Many social choice problems, old and new, including things I won't have time to discuss today, what to do about the threatened environment, about global warming and so on, absolutely demand much more intensive public reasoning than was seen in the literature that followed Arrow's pattern. So this is not only one way of removing the problem of impossibility, it's also the only way of making sense of what we are trying to do. However, there is also a second motivation in discussing what I want to discuss, though they are related, in the extended edition. I saw in one of we battled whether it should be called expanded edition or extended edition. And I was amused to see that one of the letters suggesting that it be reviewed made a compromise and described it as an extended edition. I hope it's not entirely extended. Yes. Not only did the literature on social choice theory grow radically over the last half a century, but also the world has seen the emergence of new barriers to fair social choice, some of which make the spirit of liberty, equality, and fraternity from the French Revolution look even more remote today than it looked in the 1960s when I was doing the first edition of the book. Recent developments in America, with the election of Donald Trump as US President, in France, with the increased hold of Marine Le Pen and National Front on the French electorate, in Britain, the victory of Brexit, powered largely by a sense of dislike of settled immigrants, and elsewhere, give us pause about the pursuit of reasoned democratic norms that inform the general approach of social choice theory. In India too, there are signs that minds may have narrowed, though some see this as being more realistic about the world and cutting out the moral hot air as they see it. What is not, however, in doubt is the fact that the expulsion of settled immigrants without proper papers in the USA, coming from Mexico and elsewhere, removal of the rights of Europeans living in Britain, being the fear of being targeted, bringing that fear to minority communities in India, cannot be seen as a cultivation of fraternity. Penalties imposed on teachers for giving lectures critical of the priorities of the ruling government, and even on those who arrange such lectures at one university or another, has far-reaching implications on the value of liberty in contemporary India. There are dangers that liberty and fraternity have something of a difficult time in India. If that is the danger, the pursuit of equality, furthermore, has increasingly taken a back seat in policy making here. It never had very much of a front seat, I must say, even in previous regimes. But the seat has been, if not turned the way I've turned from the light, it seems to be receding. In this brief introductory remark, I'm doing no more than pointing to some possible topics for discussion to follow, chaired by Prabhat. But let me take this brief opportunity to identify three confusions that seem to have emerged powerfully in the recent past in my country. As illustration, I shall tend to concentrate particularly on universities. This is only because I'm more familiar with them, but also because universities have a very important role in broadening public discussion. So much so that John Stuart Mill, otherwise such an egalitarian, even thought that universities members should have two votes, not one. Now, for that extraordinarily terrible idea, I can only say that he was so keen on their voices being listened to that he wanted that. There is, first of all, a confounding, I think, in the discussion here. I'm not accusing everyone. Most people are very clear-headed, more clear-headed than I am. So I'm referring to those things which are not clear-headed and those need correction. I'm by no means suggesting that I'm more clear-headed than most people are much more clear-headed than me, but some people are not. There's a confounding of the government with the state. The government has executive power, but an obligation not to see itself as the whole of the state. There's the court, there's the media, there is public reason, there are our rights, there are our human rights, our legal rights, only a part of the state, domain of the state. Much discussed, by the way, in the Constituent Assembly. For example, the money for the state universities come from the state. And this is dispensed by the government, not owned by the government. But the fact that it's being dispensed by the government does not entail that it is the government that should take the crucial decision in the running of the university. The importance of autonomy and academic freedom, that is very easily understood in Europe and America, and which have made American universities flourish the way they have, seem to become increasingly an alien thought in the governance of universities in India. If India does not have world-class universities, there's a lot of complaint about that. That deficiency is not unconnected with the way the universities have been run through governmental overreach. Even some promise that the government now is going to construct some world-class universities. There's a contradiction in that. That's not how you construct a world-class university. You have to make it grow. But aside from what this lack of freedom does to the university, the climate of fear and consequent obedience is also extremely detrimental to the practice of democracy itself. Government by discussion is hard to achieve if dissidents live in the constant danger of being accused of being anti-national. A second confusion is that between the majority and the plurality. I did a paper, well, I did something for the New York Times, but a longer paper in the New York Review of Books, jointly with my colleague Eric Maskin, with whom I teach social choice theory, and who got a Nobel, but not in social choice theory, but on system design in some way, much closer to what we are discussing. And we discussed how the American electoral system can be changed to make it a majority vote rather than a plurality vote. Mr. Trump did not get a majority for the first 17 primaries. In fact, at that time, several of the other candidates, including Rubio, could have defeated him in one-to-one contest. And that's what Prabhat would have said that day. You would have been eliminated, but wasn't. But you just went by plurality. It's just like an Indian thing that you take a constituency, whoever gets the largest number of votes wins, a system that the British left for us as a colonial legacy. And that blends our system with plurality system. The American system is easier to reform than the Indian, but the Indian system can also be reformed. I'm not expecting that to happen right now. On the other hand, I would like people to understand that we do not have a majority system right now, even if people use that language. Given the Indian electoral system, it's possible for a party to get a majority of seats in the parliament with a minority of votes. The BJP did get a majority in the Lok Sabha, but this was based on no more than 31% of the vote. Even with its allies, the percentage goes no higher than 39. There's nothing illegitimate in governing, and I emphasize that, in governing with a minority of support. I'm not protesting about that at all. BJP and the allies have the right to govern the country. Since that is the system we presently have. But that governance does not go with any illusion of speaking for a majority, not to mention the nation. The third confusion is between the voters the electorate in the act of voting, and the people. People do vote, and that of course is important. But as citizens, people also have reason and indeed the duty to discuss problems with others, indeed to argue with others. In fact, if you have a strong view, not only do you have a right to express that view, you have a duty to express that view if you are going to have government by discussion. That is what government by discussion is. So it's not that you're doing it without people objecting because it's good for you. You're doing it because that's what you want to contribute to the discussion. I have to say, when I'm coming back to Sukhumai again, we had endless discussion on this subject, sitting in the coffee house across the college in the 1950s. Democracy does not suggest that people who vote, say every fourth or fifth year, must in between those dates retreat into inactivity and doing nothing because they have done their job, namely voted. That's not going to be their job. We the people, quote from the American Constitution, is we the people, not we the voters. If public reasoning has become increasingly more difficult in India, this is a loss not only to liberty and individual freedom, but also to the participation in the practice of democracy. These are not problems only in India, I should emphasize, nor are they entirely novel in India today. I emphasize these points because I've been quite critical of the present situation. This is a problem in America, the so-called alternative path that came from Donald Trump and made this discussion difficult. But there are still, I don't think papers like New York Times or the Washington Post have feared that they would be suppressed. I guess it would be really difficult if they publish something which goes wrong, or they would be starved out because ads would not come their way. So these are concerns that apply in India, but this is not known. I think the quality of public debate and the newspaper discussion at the time of Brexit was, I think, terrible. A lot of things were not aired at all. And when the British court said Theresa May had to go to the Parliament, one of the biggest selling newspapers described it as the court betraying the people of Britain. Now, so we are not alone in this problem, but we are pretty much in there, in the thick of it. And it's not normalized. We have this oppression. We have a censorship of the kind that I have protested in the past and would have continued to do so again, including no reason why people can't read Saturday Words or any other book that they want to do. The propensity to ban is very strong in India. That has to go. But while there have been threats and suppression earlier too, the extent of these threats, armed with these preconfusions which I described, seem to be enormously greater at this time than it has been in the past. We have to recognize, and I'm afraid I don't want to discourage you from looking at the book. I'm not encouraging to buy the book. The Penguin may not like it for me, saying that you can borrow it from his library. But it brings out that collective choice and difficult problems so they can be solved. I want to put the emphasis it can be solved. The same applies to problems today that we face. Collective choice is in any form a difficult exercise. But even in its practice in the world, about which I've been speaking, we have to be vigilant in making sure that it's not made more problematic than it need be by confusion between the state and the government, between majority and plurality, and between the voters and the people. We should have an obligation to talk with each other, argue with each other, to speak freely, and naked government by discussion. If the exercise of freedom of expression leads to being fired from one's job, or being arrested, or while beaten up while in custody, these are newspaper things and they are all subject to court discussion. But as report in the newspaper, while tapes are being constructed to tell a story differently from what actually happened, then there is a need to shed a fear for democracy in India. Democracy does demand our strongest loyalty and defense. There are few things as important as that today.